Find home wherever you roam at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites. Stretch out and enjoy home-like amenities for however long you need. And when you're a Sonesta Travel Pass member, staying at Sonesta ES and Simply Suites means earning points toward free nights, upgrades, and more. Go to Sonesta.com and book your stay and unlock their best rates with Sonesta Travel Pass. Here today, roam tomorrow. Join now at Sonesta.com. Terms and conditions apply.
This podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal, medical, or mental health advice. The views and opinions expressed do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the podcast and are not intended to malign any religion, group, club, organization, business, individual, anyone, or anything. I'm Sarah Edmondson.
And I'm Anthony Nippy Ames. And this is
A Little Bit Culty.
Cults are commonplace now. From fandoms to fads, we're examining them all. We look at what happens when things that seem like a great thing at first go bad.
Every week, we chat with survivors, experts, and whistleblowers for real culty stories told directly by the people who lived through them, because we want you to learn a few things that we've had to learn the hard way.
For example, if you think you're too smart to get sucked into something culty, you might be prime recruitment material, and who knows, you could already be in a cult. If you're not aware of your programming, you're probably being programmed, so keep listening to find out.
We'll talk about all sorts of topics on the show, but be aware, this podcast might contain stories that could be alarming to some of our listeners, so please check our show notes for more detailed descriptions and take care of yourself.
Subscribe to our Patreon for Thursday bonus episodes, Q&A, and all sorts of exclusive content. That's patreon.com/alittlebitculty.
Welcome to Season 7 of A Little Bit Culty.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, hanging on to my love.
Hey everyone, welcome back to A Little Bit Culty. Is that good enough for you?
That's good.
Okay, all right.
Culty friends, clip in to your imaginary spin bikes, because we, today, much anticipated, are finally diving into the sweaty, candlelit world of SoulCycle on A Little Bit Culty.
This is an episode we've been flirting with, but not really seriously, because people have been sliding into our DMs, yet here we are about 3 or 4 years later after people have suggested the cultiness of SoulCycle.
Nippy, don't
So we're
deny
going
it.
to, quote, unpack
We're going to
this.
unpack it, but listen.
Is it a fitness fad
or
a culty trap, Sarah?
I don't know, but don't deny that you're a SoulCycle veteran. Didn't you and your ex clip in for those classes back in the day?
Pump the brakes.
I was
okay?
missing all the fun.
I did a couple classes. I ended up changing in the street on 83rd and wherever it was, and I was like, this place is not my cult. I'm already in one.
Looks like you may have dodged a bullet, although it might have been safer for you to do SoulCycle instead of Nexium.
But it was a shitty locker room. Everyone was like, rubbing elbows, had stank all over it.
Yeah, the close vicinity, that would have been a turnoff.
SoulCycle got that stank.
Let's not get sued here with defaming marks about SoulCycle. There's lots of great things about it. We're going to talk about it. But here's the thing. When you love synchronized pedaling,
Which, I don't.
I don't, but I like a good fitness class. I'm jealous I never got to spin with the cool kids. But let's be real, SoulCycle's a beast. It's 100 million plus in revenue, a cult following, but there's a darker spin. Instructors are worshipped with a headset up on a pedestal, $30 plus a class, and it's a community that's a little bit like a clique on steroids.
That's about what I got, $30 a class, teaching a class.
That's a lot of money for an hour.
Yeah.
So to spill all the tea on SoulCycle, we've got Jess Rothschild, executive producer of Cult of Body and Soul, a new podcast which has already dropped, and we highly recommend it. If you don't know Jess's work, she's a New York pop culture expert, slaying as creator and host of Hot Takes and Deep Dives. Jess went from SoulCycle writer to front of class star, and she has made an incredible podcast.
If you're into New York pop culture, give her podcast a listen. She covers a lot. Welcome, Jess, to our show.
Jess, welcome to A Little Bit Culty.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Great to have you here. This has been a long time coming, as SoulCycle has been sort of an ongoing kind of side reference. Like everything's a little bit culty, like SoulCycle. But
Been in our DMs quite a few
Yes.
times. Yeah.
But I didn't really realize how culty until your podcast came out. So I'm very excited to talk to you. We're very excited
What
to talk
started as a joke is now a reality.
Well, because I think a lot of people, they talk about it. You're right. It is like, it can be like a punchline, but not everybody. I think a lot of the people who call it a cult are the people who weren't necessarily in the inside and actually don't really know what went on. And because it's a lot of excitement and thrilling and there's a lot of euphoria involved. And so I think it's very easy to just use SoulCycle as a punchline. But if you were there and you felt it, you know the power of it. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
We've heard this story before.
yes.
oh my God.
And we want to know all the specifics. And I do think it's important, and something that Nippy and I have been talking recently on the podcast on our journey. By the way, we're 8 years free from Nexium.
Wow.
8 years free.
Like
day
today.
after tomorrow.
Well, around now, 8 years ago. It's when we were waking up. But what we've learned is that throwing around the word cult isn't actually that helpful in some ways, because you don't get to say what specific behaviors were going on that aren't good or that are problematic or toxic.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to get
And
into
again,
all
the
that.
word cult also, that's another word that is used as a punchline.
yeah.
Yeah.
But nobody says when you're in a cult, oh, thanks for pointing that out. I'm going to quit.
I had a 100% positive experience with SoulCycle, which is why I think I'm the perfect person to tell the story, because I never worked there. I don't have an axe to grind. I'm just a journalist telling the truth and telling my story.
Amazing. Let's start there.
Which
How-
is a great segue.
Yeah.
What was the initial lure? What did you sign up for? How did we get here? And how did it end up in a podcast?
Wow. Okay. So I was always into fitness. From when I was 20 years old, that was when I started working out. And I would work
Look at
out.
your arms, by the way.
Oh my God. Stop.
It's like amazing.
It's a gun show on our podcast here.
So I would always just go to my New York sports club 2 blocks from my apartment. And
I was a member there.
You were you?
Yeah.
Wait,
about
so wait,
10
let's
years.
quickly paint the picture. Did you ever live in New York?
Yeah, I lived
Maybe
there
did.
for 15 years.
Perfect. Okay, so I want to talk
Yeah.
about that. So I belonged to New York Sports Club down the block from my apartment, and I would spin there, and I hated it. So I don't know why I kept going. And that was spin when you would literally write your name to sign up. You would get there an hour before. You would
Yes.
sign up and wait and get in the class. Meanwhile, most of those classes, it was me and 5 other people. So I don't know why we were even signing up, why we couldn't just roll on in there. And cut to, I'm living in Manhattan. At that time, I was living in a borough. I was living in Queens. And SoulCycle had taken off. But I wasn't really that aware of it. But a friend of mine lived next door to the Upper East Side studio on 83rd Street. And I worked on the Upper East Side. And so it was just a fun thing, like, oh, come upstairs to her apartment. We would hang out, we would catch up. And then she had gotten into it. She's like, I love this instructor. The music, it's really dancey. And because I was a fitness junkie, I would go to yoga. I would go to classes, but mostly yoga and maybe some like boot camp classes. And so that was how I took my first class. And I wasn't like blown away by it. I thought it was fun and I kept going with her for a few months. And then she, I guess, like fell off of it. But I kept going. I tried another instructor. I remember standing outside the studio listening to the music of somebody else, not the girl who we were taking. And I could hear a Christina Aguilera song from the Stripped album. It was a deep cut from Stripped, which is an incredible Christina album, as everybody knows. And I was like, oh my God, this guy knows, if he's that in tune with music on that level. And the song was Walk Away, for anybody who knows that song by Christina Aguilera. And I thought, wow, you can ride to a song that's so slow. And so it intrigued me because he was incorporating this element of spirituality. And I wasn't even in the class. I was standing outside the room and it was just hearing that song that drew me to his class. And so I'm much more connected with his music. And then a few months later, that was when I really started looking at the website. There, of course, was no app, but this is like 2011. That was when I started obsessing over the website, looking at the different instructors. And one day, a new instructor photo popped up, and it was this woman named Stevie. And there was something that pulled me through my screen, through the computer, and I knew I had a connection with this woman.
Yeah, I looked her up.
Do you see what I
She
saw?
has a rock star vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, I love a reformed party girl. I can sort of sense, I also have very strong intuition. Like, I am a little bit psychic. I have very strong intuition. And I could just sense somebody who's troubled. I'm drawn to you. I was just so drawn to her. And I went, and it was a 5 o'clock class, a Saturday, and I'm living in Queens. So it's not like I can just walk to the studio. I'm at home with my girlfriend, and I'm like, I'm going to go into the city to take this class. Let's meet for dinner. And that class was transformative. That was the class, and Stevie was what hooked me. And that changed the trajectory of my life.
So paint us the picture, and what was so transformative about it? Was it the music? Was it the way that she was talking to you, the whole thing, who she was?
It was, the music was dark and heavy, and you could stomp on it. Like in SoulCycle, you're clipped into the bike and you're riding to the rhythm. Unlike the classes that I was taking, unlike the spin classes at big box gyms, they're not choreographed to the music. You're not riding to the rhythm. You're just like, go fast here, go slow here, turn on the resistance. And the music is sort of irrelevant. The music's kind of in the background. Whereas with SoulCycle, it's all meticulously designed to the music. That's how they're taught to do it. And that is part of the seduction of it, is the music. And it's very deliberate. The order of the songs is all deliberate to seduce the rider, to lull them into a place.
So it's kind of a rave, but the bike is the drug.
Wow. Well, the instructor and the music are the drug. The instructor and the music are the drug. But ultimately, it's the instructor. It's cult of personality.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And because they're trained to do this. This is not something that just happened.
Oh, my friend makes fun of me because he's like, why are you so obsessed with the instructor training program? He's like, why is this your main talking point? I'm like, well, it's because it's the truth. I was obsessed with what they were. I knew the lore of the training program. I knew through talking to people that it was like 8 to 12 weeks, and they would sit there with the director of instructor training, who is the star. She is the gateway into our series. This woman, Janet Fitzgerald, she still works there. She was the director of instructor training for a decade. She still is a master instructor. And she was one of the co-founders. She was her guru back in LA. So it all traces back to this woman, Janet. And she is the one who trained all of the instructors.
And you got access. Even though you weren't a instructor yourself, you got access to these manuals.
No, I didn't get access to the manuals. In fact, they made a manual and then immediately threw them away. She told me in an interview.
Interesting.
But I used to joke, no, it wasn't until I did this documentary that I knew anything really about the training program, other than it was 6 to 8 weeks. Like what I was told was so generic before I did this. Just in my life, I knew it was 6 to 8 weeks. I knew they had to ride a lot. I knew that there were a lot of drills they had to do. They had to learn how to perform the class, how to curate the playlists, where to play certain songs. It's all done to the beats per minute. That's why, like how it starts slow, that instructor who was doing that slower Christina Aguilera song, that is deliberate. It's because they lull you in through a song based on the beats per minute, the BPM, which Apple Music gives you when you can look that up online, but Apple Music was very easy at that time to sort of organize it.
It sounds like it's almost like a system or an algorithm type thing where there's a science to it, and Janet cracked the science or hacked the science and produced it like a show, like a record almost, like
Dead
formulaic.
Dead on. And it was a mix of, so the beats per minute, that was one piece. The beats per minute
Is the script.
Yeah. So how fast?
And then the instructors are the actors.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You just nailed it. Because the other piece of it was teaching them and giving them tools for how to connect with people on a spiritual level. And
Smart.
a lot of that has to do with getting off the bike and getting on the level with them. And an instructor told me that they were told, because also it's candlelit. Keep in mind this environment, the ambiance is the lights are off. There's a spotlight on the instructor. They're on a podium risen above you. So it is like any hero worship. They are the preacher.
Mm-hmm.
And they get off the bike during certain moments, because how can you do the whole thing on the bike?
Right.
And so when they get off the bike, that gives them an opportunity to really focus on what they're saying to you. So it's different bits of spirituality, motivational coaching based on the instructor. Not every single instructor does this, but the ones who are successful, they do it. The ones who can't do it, they are successful because they're hot and young, and all these young girls want to fuck them.
Mm-hmm.
That's one path to being a successful SoulCycle instructor, is you're developing that. And they're not spiritual at all because they're 25 years old and they haven't lived a life. But the older instructors, and those were the ones who I connected with, were the ones who spoke from their life experience and bringing that experience to the room, being willing to talk about that experience. And like I said, when they get on the level with you and they look you in the eye, and there are candles around the podium, and during certain parts of the class, they'll move the candles around. And specifically at one moment, the sort of the 11 o'clock number before the last song is a moment where they don't really say anything. It's sort of meditation time. You ride without them speaking to a song that is, again, a little bit slower. And sometimes they'll come over, they'll touch you, they'll touch your hand. Sometimes I've seen them whisper things in people's ears. They'll look you in the eyes. And a former instructor, actually, he taught at SoulCycle for 5 years, and now he's been at Barry's boot camp ever since. So I love that. I love getting the perspective of both, because I go to Barry's as well. And it's totally different. So I love the dichotomy between the two. And he told me that they were told, be careful with eye contact in that moment, because the sweat and the candlelight, that is the moment where riders can hook onto you and, for lack of a better phrase, potentially fall in love with you.
That makes sense.
And he took that as, all right, I'm going to look people in the eye and have a moment. And this is how they make their money. It's based on filling up that room and seducing people in some way. Sometimes actually literally seducing them, but seducing, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
There are many types of seduction.
Well, you have a power, and you can abuse it
Yes.
if you want at that point. Yeah.
Oh, well, we get into that, the abuse of power. Yeah.
Yes. In terms of them being like rock stars,
Yeah.
do you think that this was actually not something just like that organically happened? They were actually coached to seduce riders and to keep them coming back.
Yes.
It wasn't just sort of an organic byproduct.
They were absolutely coached through this 8 to 12 week training program. And on top of that, they're not just, but they were very deliberate with the reason why SoulCycle was so successful. Unlike just any other random spin studio, the secret sauce to SoulCycle was their casting. One of the co-founders was a talent agent in LA, and she worked for Benny Medina, who managed J-Lo, Tyra Banks, P. Diddy. So she understood how to turn celebrities into brands, into businesses. And she said, that's going to be our approach here. And so they weren't even looking for fitness professionals. They were looking for who is the charismatic performer. So every successful, or many SoulCycle instructors are former dancers, actors, Broadway performers, singers, because they know how to perform. You can take any performer or anybody who's charismatic, and you can just teach them how to ride the bike. You can teach anybody how to ride a fucking bike. You can't teach somebody how to command a room and have charisma. The X Factor, you can't teach X Factor. So that's what they looked for.
It's well marketed.
But that was a huge red flag listening to your podcast. I was like, oh my goodness, they're not fit. Many of them, not all of them, were not fitness instructors.
Well, they're not even certified.
Yeah.
But what's the certification? Like, it's a bike.
But to be like to teach a class normally of any other kind, don't you have to be certified for like
Of course.
basic kinesiology understanding and like
So-
I don't know.
So this is an amazing point. So to work at a gym, to take on personal training clients, and to work at any other boutique fitness like Barry's Boot Camp, Orange Theory, yoga. Yoga, you have to take like a 200-hour teacher training. You go through a 200-hour or plus teacher training program, and that certifies you. NASM, the National Academy of Sports Medicine, that is the leader in certification for fitness. And that is a whole textbook. And you can do it online, but it's difficult. You have to learn
hard.
all about human anatomy.
Yeah.
Oh, you did it. Oh, so tell me about that.
Yeah, it's hard. You have to study a lot for it. You have to take a test.
Is this from when you were learning how to train under Keith Raniere and Nexium?
No, it wasn't.
Oh, separate?
It was separate, yeah.
Nippy taught.
It was basic. It's a
As a
basic
side
certification so you can go in and get, you know how it works. You just get a certification. I got it and never really used it because I was traveling so much.
I'm learning about this for the first time.
Yes. So NASM is the gold standard. If you have NASM, you can take on personal training clients. You can get a job at Equinox as a trainer, and that's what you need. And yeah, you learn all about human anatomy, exercise science, etc. And that's the same certification you need to teach at Barry's Boot Camp, to teach at Rumble Boxing, like you name it. Yoga is its own thing. SoulCycle. So before SoulCycle, if you were teaching spin at a big box gym at like Crunch or New York Sports Club, you would get what's called Mad Dog. It used to be, I don't know if this still exists. It probably does. But to teach spin, or AKA like group fitness spin at a gym, you would have to just be Mad Dog certified. And what I learned through interviewing instructors, I'm like, so what was the certification like in the very beginning, before there was the training program? Because for the first 3 years, there was literally no training program. They were just plucking people and figuring it out. And they just made them go to Mad Dog training program. And I'm like, so what was it? And she was like, literally, you sat in a classroom and it was nothing. I'm like, so it was bullshit? She's like, yeah. You literally sat in a classroom and you walk out the door and you're certified. And it's kind of like taking your pre-driver's light. What's that, before you get your light?
Yeah, your permit.
Your permit. Yeah, you take a test.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you can actually drive a car. And so that was the industry standard in fitness for spin. But SoulCycle, and there's questions about how are they legally able to do this, but they kind of did away with that. They no longer required them to do that. And they were like, we're going to create our own training. And it had nothing to do with human anatomy, exercise science. These people know nothing about the muscles in the body. In fact, a lot of SoulCycle can be quite dangerous. And we get into that.
Yeah, the episode you got into that was really informative.
What did you think? Well, first of all, I love that you listened to it.
Of course.
Tell me what did you find really interesting? Like, what was really surprising? What were you most compelled by?
Well, for me, as somebody who missed it, like I missed SoulCycle. I've spun before, but I never got to do SoulCycle. Nippy did, and we'll get into that. I was just listening to it going, if I had found this when it was at its heyday, I totally would have been hooked. Just knowing me and my desire for community. And just a quick sidebar, when we moved here to Atlanta, I was not in a good place. It was a very stressful move. And the first thing I did was find a yoga. I'm more into yoga now. And I found a yoga studio that was very loud and dark. And it was great for me. And I was like really stressed, and it helped me like release all my stress hormones and everything. And it was like, I found my place. And then after about a year, I was like, this is not good for me. And I found a more quiet, zen, like a better, but like it was what I needed at the time. And as I was listening to your podcast, I was thinking, there were so many times in my life where that would have been such a great fit for me. And I would have maybe even become an instructor, because I also am a performer by trade. But I also was struck by how many red flags I can see now with my cult education experience that I wouldn't have seen had I been in my 20s. I got obviously caught up in Nexium. I could have very easily been caught up in this.
This podcast wouldn't exist without our fantastic, supportive, generous patrons. Come find us over on Patreon. We're at patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. Go there for bonus episodes, exclusive content, and the occasional Zoom with our fan favorites from our past episodes. Subscribe now and join us. That's patreon.com/a-little-bit-culty. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. Remember, when you support our sponsors, you support our podcast.
Well, summer's here. OFISH in Atlanta. OFISH is short for officially. I'm feeling pretty confident about my self-care routine that's kind of centering around one of our newest sponsors, which we love, Flamingo. It's pretty much a self-care routine that focuses on smooth skin, but also, how did I get that smooth skin? Thanks, Flamingo. Your razors and body care products make shaving a breeze, so I'm shorts ready or bathing suit ready for whatever fun summer decides to throw my way. I've been using Flamingo's original razor. It's a total win. I've actually been using this razor since before we even had a podcast. It glides over every curve for a smooth, irritation-free shave. Their daily moisturizing lotion keeps my skin hydrated and soft post-shave, and I love that it's refillable. Refills start at just $2, half the price of what I used to spend, and no pink tax nonsense. Flamingo's designed for your unique needs, like high-performance tools like their smaller razors for trickier spots or wax kits for a razor-free option. Millions of women trust Flamingo for premium, affordable body care that fits your lifestyle. Time to stock up for summer, people, if that's your vibe. Keep smooth and refreshed with Flamingo, hair removal products made with your body in mind. Get started with an exclusive offer for our listeners, 25% off your first order at shopflamingo.com/culty. That's shopflamingo.com/culty. Happy summer. Okay, my friends, picture this. Your weekly meals planned, groceries picked, and all of the stress of dinner time gone. That's what Hungry Root does for us, and we are obsessed. Their smart cart technology fills your cart with personalized picks and recipes, over 15,000 options, many ready in 15 minutes or less, and it gets smarter with every order. It's like having a personal shopper who just totally nails your vibe. After taking their quiz, my shipment arrived with high-protein chicken skewers, yum, salad kits, obvious choice, and these amazing chocolate coconut snacks to die for. It's just perfect for our family's varying tastes and also our health goals. Hungry Root's quality is top tier. No hormones or antibiotics in their meats. No sketchy additives like high fructose corn syrup, gross, and brands I trust like Vital Farms. Plus, their best price program saves me from impulse buys and food waste, freeing up time to do literally anything else. My kids devour their snacks, and I love that it fits into my protein goals as well. #perimenopause. And here's the best part. For a limited time, you can get 40% off your first box plus a free premium gift like a protein, veggie, or sweet treat in every box for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/culty and use code culty. That's hungryroot.com/culty with code culty for 40% off your first box and free item for life. hungryroot.com/culty, code culty. Make mealtime effortless. Trust me, you'll love it. You've heard from our sponsors. Now let's get back to a little bit culty, shall we?
What were the red flags that
we saw?
Well, no. In listening. Yeah, because the question is, to me, it's cult of personality. And the question is it a cult? I mean, that's difficult to answer.
Yeah.
It's gray. It's nuanced.
I can put language to it later, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to me, I wouldn't say it's a full-on destructive cult.
Right.
Like NXIVM or Waco or Jonestown or Scientology. I would say that there's elements of it that are unhealthy where if you're becoming obsessed, like I was hearing like some people taking 3 to 5 classes a day, that's just not healthy. Also, I noticed that a lot of people who were former addicts were replacing their addiction with this other addiction. Okay, yes, SoulCycle is definitely a healthier addiction than cocaine, for sure, on the body. But also, like, I guess at any time I see people get really extreme with something, it can be problematic. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a full-on destructive cult where you're being exploited, but there's elements of it that were kind of like, I don't like that. That's where I came to.
I would add too. I mean, it always comes down to a question of who's responsible for what. And so you have someone who's consciously marketing an entity, right? That could be Twiddlywinks or Monopoly as far as we can. And they've done it and they've created a platform where personalities can come in that help market spin, right? And those personalities have a platform that they can now abuse, and the people that have marketed them don't really have checks and balances for the people that they hire. So if someone comes in and uses the platform that's been created for them and it caters to the asset of their charisma, they use their charisma to abuse people consciously or unconsciously, right? This is the nebulous area, right? So, is it my fault that all these women are throwing themselves at me because I have such a charming personality while I'm training them? And now I have access to all these people the same way a pro athlete walks into a bar and gets mauled by a bunch of women, right? So what's the responsibility in that? And NBA has created a platform for him to go showcase his skill sets, and this comes with the territory. So are they going?
And they were rewarded for it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Our society rewards it.
When Janet is saying, like, they gave us cash, the bad behavior was rewarded because it filled up the room and it was making the company more money.
Right. And so here we are with the age-old question of capitalism and when does capitalism become bad? And Edward Bernays has made many appearances on our podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Century of the Self. Isn't
the
that documentary?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I've seen that,
So it basically caters to people's needs, and then if you're catering to people's desires, you have a product spin that's catering to people's desires. Desires are subjective, but not my responsibility because I'm just creating a platform for spin, and it's helping people. And when does it become culty? I mean, it becomes culty, I guess it's a case-by-case thing. I went into spin looking for a place to dump calories. And when I see all that rah-rah stuff and the lights go down, I roll my eyes, and I'm like, I'm out of here. This isn't... I'm a snob with my workouts too. I mean, I've been working out since, I played college football. So like I roll my eyes at people that think they're working out and that's a workout. Like, This drifts away from the cult aspect. But yeah, we do raise the question of, is this a good workout? Right.
Is spinning a good workout?
That was my favorite episode. Yeah.
Oh, that was your favorite
because
episode?
I thought it was. Yeah. And you were talking about, what was it? I'll let you take over for this, but it was like close link or unlinked. And it was about what it does to your hip. Open chain. That was right.
Open chain
yeah.
and closed chain.
Oh my God. That explains my hip problems.
She was amazing. She was amazing. Yeah.
Well, share with our audience.
Tell us, because our audience won't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, so as part of it, I interviewed some experts. I had to interview a therapist because otherwise it's just opinion. It's just me saying, I think it's cult of personality. Right. I need somebody who's educated in this area. So I bring her in and she talks about, actually in a bonus episode, she talks about transference. That's something.
Yes, that was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, transference is huge, which is a psychological term that we get into in the 6th episode, which is a bonus episode, which basically means it's any relationship between student and teacher, therapist, client. So student, teacher, that's SoulCycle, okay? We're students, we're teaching. And it basically means how you project, and it can go both ways. You project everything onto the instructor. And also the therapist explained that the therapist or the instructor or the teacher can also be projecting things onto the client. And that's called transference. Another term that I learned through this is limerence. And limerence is that really best describes the feeling of falling in love. Obviously, you're not falling in love. No, you're falling in limerence. Limerence means you're falling into an obsession with a person, and it can be sexual, and you're thinking about this person 24/7. This happens when people meet and maybe you meet somebody and you're now fantasizing that you're dating, or maybe you've been on one date and you're just completely consumed by a person, or it's just somebody who you want to be with, and you're just 100% consumed, and you think you're in love with them, but it's it's limerence. Like limerence is the word.
Yeah, the fantasy never involves a downside.
Right, exactly.
What do you mean?
Well, when you fantasize about somebody, you're not taking in the holistic person and the downside.
You're not bringing in any reality.
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Because you're projecting everything onto them. You're turning them into a completely different human being.
So I don't know if you experienced this, Sarah, but I can remember being in trainings and intensives. Intensives is what we call our trainings. And working with someone and then feeling after I helped them with someone, they related to me in a way that I felt,
And
this
that's
feels
why
off. Like I have a power now that
transference.
It's not, but I would shut it down.
That's why Nippy didn't have a harem and Keith Raniere did.
But I was open to it.
How did you shut it down?
No, you were not. No, Nippy and I actually met in that context and flirted in that context. But then we got together versus like Keith, who started his harem. But transference.
But that's what Keith predicated.
Yeah, I mean, that's what his whole way of coaching women into having a spiritual wife relationship started with transference. And tell me if this is your understanding as well. It's projecting that person is the person that's creating the good feeling. So when you go into a soul cycle and you have the endorphin release and it's dark and it's romantic with the candlelight and you feel all the, it also, again, like I said earlier, releasing all your stress hormones and your cortisol and all those things, and you feel amazing, there is a high to that, but then you're attributing it to the person on the pedestal.
Yes.
Right? So that that's the hook.
What happens psychologically with transference is you then associate SoulCycle / the instructor, the entire experience in your brain, it is then associated with pure pleasure.
Right.
And people will pay money for that.
Of course.
I think that's the hook. I think that's how conscious the marketing was and all that, we'll never know probably.
What's interesting, and then I want to get back to your question about the open and closed chain exercise, because then I will get back to that. I know we got off track, but
That was knowledge.
but what's interesting is, so you know how I was taking classes and I was like, whatever. They say, I've listened to interviews with the founders and they say that to get to the point where you then, well, they're not associating with pure pleasure and transference, but they're saying in plain language, it takes 3 classes. After you've taken your 3rd class, that is when you begin. If it's with somebody who is hooking you, it takes 3 times.
That makes sense.
Do you remember this, Nippy, when we taught Nexium modules? Every module is like built on another module, so you do it in order. And they would say that you'd have to take a class, any module, 3 times to fully integrate the material.
Wow. That's so
We're finding
interesting.
more parallels than we than I even
Yes.
knew. Yeah.
No, the more we dig into this, the more diabolical Keith and his
Wow.
process is revealed to us, seemingly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if the people who created SoulCycle are diabolical. It doesn't seem like that based on your podcast.
No, they're
Well,
they're just
marketing in itself has somewhat of a diabolical.
well, the goal is to
aspect
hook
it.
you forever.
And well, also, what's marketing about? It's about money, right?
they
And
were just
so-
great businesswomen.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
just sharks in business
money.
and they knew how to brand. They understood sex sells and they understood this is Hollywood, baby. And they were successful and like good for them.
That
I
part
think
I'm
those-
okay with. It's the
So here's a question for you. What we just said gets a total hall pass of any sort of moral
because it's Hollywood,
critique.
baby.
And I think for me, I mean, if you look at capitalism gone wrong or marketing gone wrong, we don't criticize the people who are like, we say good for you, and we put too much emphasis on the people who are good at marketing and making money in our country, I think. Well, what's the ROI on it?
Yeah, what's the effect of that?
What is the overall objective if you don't inject that with a little bit more humanity and consciousness, I guess, is my kind of question.
Well, I think so to me, here's where it turns. It's not a secret that SoulCycle then sold to Equinox. That is when the culture changed and there was a culture war between those 2 companies. And that is where there was a lot of alleged abuse and racism, allegedly, between the new corporate regime that came in. And these people were no longer treated and paid and valued the way they had been under the founders, Julie Rice and Elizabeth Cutler. So there is something when you really got to look at Equinox and listen to what those people are saying. And there's a lot more that I didn't include because I'm not looking to get sued.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of allegations of very abusive things, but some of it can't be proven, alleged racism, et cetera. But that's something that we can't prove. And also, I'm not in the business of doing that. I'm here to make an entertainment product, not take down SoulCycle. That's not my, I'm making a piece of entertainment. But if you're interested, I do encourage you to look at those articles and exposés.
Since you did have a good experience overall with SoulCycle, what compelled this podcast?
So I have a weekly show, a weekly podcast that I've been doing for 6 years now called Hot Takes and Deep Dives, where, it's centered on gay pop iconography in New York City culture. I've interviewed Rosie O'Donnell, Sandra Bernhard, Isaac Mizrahi, a lot of notable New Yorkers, television writers, people who it's very indulging 20-year-old Jess. And so that's been an incredible experience. And it started out as a writer. Eventually it evolved into a podcast. And This is my second documentary. My first documentary was on the history of Fire Island, which are the oldest gay communities in the United States, which is you take a ferry from off the coast of Long Island and it's like this magical land, not so dissimilar from SoulCycle, where it's this magical land where suddenly you're meeting people who you probably may not meet in everyday life. These people you might not necessarily be working with, or they're certainly not in your family. And so these are both magical lands where music is a huge part of the experience and it's all about community. So I had done that series called Finding Fire Island, but years ago, I always would say, I want to make a documentary about SoulCycle. I have been saying this for a decade because I find this to be the most interesting story and subject matter ever told. And I couldn't believe, how is there not a documentary on SoulCycle?
Why do you think? Do you think people are afraid of getting sued?
I think that's part of it. I think also the founding of it. So in the first episode where I really go through the founding of it, they can't talk because there is a third founder and she has a confidentiality agreement and an NDA. She can't speak. So we're believing also this narrative that's been written about the founding of SoulCycle's. The line is blurry. So if people can't speak, how are we even telling the origin story with those people? So there's that. There's also the aspect of a lot of people won't go on the record. I was able to anonymize. The beauty of a podcast is I'm not throwing a camera in people's faces. I offered anonymity because this was their career and they wanted to share their stories and talk, but they don't want necessarily their name attached to it, which is a whole lot because, you know, these are private citizens and this was their job. And so there's that. Some instructors even didn't want to be named. Some instructors I spoke to off the record. So I think it's a mix of all of that. Is a lot of people aren't willing to sit down in front of the red light and talk.
That's a red flag to a certain degree.
And also fair to say there hasn't been well, you tell me. There's some sex scandals with instructors sleeping with married riders and things like that.
Yeah.
But like there hasn't been a direct link. It's not like the branding in Nexium. There's no right. There's not a physical abuse scandal that people can point to. It's just sort of all these culty things we've been talking about that aren't necessarily major problems in themselves, but you put it all together and it's like, yeah.
And also I think to do a film documentary, you would have needed to film inside the rooms. And I do not believe they would ever allow that to capture the footage. And by the way, I have my video editor you can watch all of the episodes on YouTube as well. And they're all using found footage. So you can see all these people that we're talking about. And I've got chyrons and lower thirds. So you can really get to know the interviewees. And I do have footage of the classes because it's all found footage.
Okay.
Some was shot by SoulCycle marketing team 15 years ago and it's just sitting on their YouTube channel. And it's fair use because it's criticism and commentary. And yeah, so I do want to say that we did our best to make this feel, I mean, it's an audio first experience.
Right.
I mean, it was.
And the music's great, by the way. Love the music.
Can I say something about the music?
Yeah, of course.
So thank you for that.
So good.
So nearly all of the music in it is pretty much custom and composed. So the composer of the theme song and a lot of the transitional music is done by one of my best friends, Elizabeth Ziff. She was the composer and an executive producer on The L Word, the Showtime series.
Yeah.
And her band did the theme song for The L Word. And every episode, you know how every episode of my series ends with a song? That's their band. And I work very close. These are like some of my closest friends. I work very closely with them. And so they gave me full access to their catalog.
That's amazing. The songs are so good. And I especially love that little 80s track, like, ding, 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 you know, like the little clappy
the theme
kind
song.
of like.
That's Elizabeth, song. Yeah.
It's so good because it kind of like brings me back. I'm a big fan of 80s movies, but it's like, that's the kind of music that would just have totally hooked me. So you did a great job.
I mean, she did a great job with the original music. And just the fact that I was able to, you know, the song, when I get hooked, when I do my monologue about finding Stevie, that song, One of Us, and you would think it's written for this because it's so specific about being sucked into a cult. When I first discovered that song of hers, I'm like, what is this about? She's like, it's about when she got her first tattoo.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, well, it's now about me getting hooked into SoulCycle. And I think it makes more sense for me getting hooked into SoulCycle than your personal.
I love when a song really just captures a feeling for you and it just fits. Like actually, when we found our theme song for A Little Bit Culty, it was written by, so it's a bit off topic, but since you just said it, written by one of our next team students who took a little bit of training and then wrote this song called Cultivated.
Oh.
When he heard about the downfall, he wrote the song. And when I heard it, I was like, oh my God, before we had a podcast, I thought we were going to make a series. It was like, we need this. This is the theme song. It was like the song from Big Little Lies, like just gave me chills.
Yeah.
Anyway, we didn't do a series, but we did the podcast and then we licensed it from him. And it's just, it just fits. Anyway, back on track.
Yes.
So
no, but thank you for shouting out the music because it's such an important piece to make this series.
Well, it's key. And it's obviously a big component of it as it was in SoulCycle.
Yeah.
And I know that you asked us this at the beginning. Let me throw it back to you. What were some of the red flags that you found when you started interviewing other people? And were there any major surprises that you didn't know?
I did not know the full extent of the Ruth Zuckerman, the third co-founder, being iced out. I did not know the full extent of that. And I talked to her off the record on the phone. We spoke on the phone. I emailed her. I said, hey, I'm setting out to do this. I would love to talk to you. And I really pitched it as I want to tell your story because I believe they fucked you. And I want to tell this from your perspective. And we got on the phone and she's like, I'm really glad you're doing this. She's like, I have a confidentiality agreement. But we talked on the phone and I was able to use some of her quotes in my narration. And also when I was talking in the first episode, I'm talking to people about it. I'm telling them some of what Ruth said and then getting their reaction.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the two other people got $90 million each?
Yes.
When they sold it to Equinox?
When they sold to Equinox.
And Ruth got none of that. Huh?
Correct.
Wow.
How is she not suing them? How did that happen?
It happened because for some reason they never signed a contract. I mean, this I'll never understand. They never signed a contract in the beginning.
Happens all the time. by the way.
How? Can you explain that to me?
I think people get
do-
in.
and they're
Doors
just-
are open. You've opened the business. Doors are open. You're now opening a second location in the Hamptons. The thing is a cultural, becoming a cultural phenomenon. Celebrities are coming. How have you not had paperwork done?
People underestimate what will happen to them when money gets involved. And
they're just
0% of zero is zero, right? So if it isn't money yet, you don't,
Right.
If people who haven't had something happen, I had something happen 2 years ago, I'll never go into something without a contract
Right.
explicitly about what value I'm providing, what you're providing, and then let's haggle that out right now.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like it's too soon and it's too awkward and it's like, well, let's just keep making it and then we'll figure it out. And then once you get busy, that's what happened.
That
with
is
us
something
once,
she said is she thought that they were really friends and that they would be able to work out any problems
There
that
you go.
arose.
That's how it happens.
Yeah.
I
Trust.
think she was very conflict averse. That was part of it. And she was also not a businesswoman. She was a spin instructor. Mm-hmm. So
But if you got 90 million, you couldn't call up Ruth and go, hey, here's 5. Thanks for your effort.
well, so here's the thing. So the 90 million came in 2016 when they sold.
Yeah.
Ruth was out back in 2009.
Oh,
Well,
right.
it's a little bit more. Yes, she stayed on as an instructor, which is, I don't want to get into that. It's too far off the road, but she was iced out as an owner. Her hands were tied because she couldn't go back to a big box gym and make $30 a class. All of her riders are now at SoulCycle. So they said, please stay on and teach. So sure, she was kind of handcuffed to SoulCycle. And eventually what happened is a rider of hers in class came up to her after class and said, hey, I'm in finance, I'm in business, I have an idea. And that idea became Flywheel. And Flywheel became the second biggest spinning studio in New York. And they just introduced technology to it where you could have like metrics.
You could race someone in class or something like that. Is that how it worked? Like you could.
Or what was different?
Well, there was a leaderboard. So you're competing with
Right.
people. You can see everybody's output. And I don't think they were riding to the rhythm. It was different. It was all about competition.
But they got Ruth involved?
I did Flywheel.
Yeah. But like,
couple times,
did
yeah.
Ruth join that?
That was Ruth's business.
So the rider of hers, he's the one who had the idea to introduce the technology and the metrics and to have the screen and the leaderboard up top in the class. And he said, let's go do this. And so she became a co-founder of Flywheel.
Okay. So she's fine financially.
Well, yeah, she's fine. She's fine. They eventually, the story with Flywheel is just very quickly, they eventually sold it. So she made her money there, but they eventually went bankrupt. Flywheel's out of business. I actually believe they were sued by Peloton because I think there's some story there. But yes, she got her money, but not 90 million from Equinox. Not Equinox money, but she got money. No. She's fine. Let's not cry over her. She co-founded the two most successful spinning businesses.
Wow.
Good for her.
Yeah.
We don't need to cry for her.
I hope she's doing okay. For more context on what brought us here, check out my memoir. It's called Scarred, the true story of how I escaped NXIVM, the cult that bound my life. I narrate the audio version, and it's also available on Amazon, Audible, and at most bookstores. And now, a brief message from our Little Bit Culty sponsors. And remember, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting this podcast.
I think the cat's out of the bag that we absolutely love Via Hemp. We've been loyal fans for a while, and they just keep winning us over. Right now, their Dream Sleep gummies are my go-to for weekend Z's. That's copping Z's for all you people out there. One gummy, and I'm sinking into deep, restful sleep and wake up refreshed and ready to take on the world. They've perfected my nighttime routine. Thank you very much, Via. Trusted by over 500,000 people, Via's redefining wellness with lab-tested, high-quality hemp products from American farms. Whether you're chasing relaxation, focus, or a mood lift, their gummies and drops range from 0 to high cannabinoid levels to suit your needs. Their product finder quiz is great to take too, suggesting products that jive with your needs. And if you're not into THC, no sweat. They've got CBD Zen Sleep gummies to jumpstart your bedtime routine. If you're 21 or over, head over to viahemp.com and use the code CULTY to receive 15% off, free shipping on orders over $100, and free gift with your first order. That's VIIAHEMP.com, code CULTY. After your purchase, tell them a Little Bit Culty sent you. That's viahemp.com, code CULTY, and enhance your everyday with Via. You know how we talk about breaking free from toxic patterns on this show? Well, let's talk about something just as real: men's mental health. Society puts this insane pressure on guys to always have it together, provide, perform, never crack. But 6 million men in the United States deal with depression every year, and it often goes unnoticed or untreated because of the stigma. Here's the deal. Strength isn't hiding your struggles. It's having the guts to say, this is hard, and reaching out, whether to a friend, a loved one, or a therapist. That's how you show up for yourself and the people who matter most. Therapy is a lifeline for so many, and it's not just for big dramatic moments. It's about picking up tools like how to handle stress, set boundaries, and just feel more like yourself again. BetterHelp makes it easy to jump in. They're the world's largest online therapy platform with over 35,000 therapists who've helped more than 5 million people. They've got 4.9 out of 5 ratings from over 1.7 million App Store reviews. And it's so convenient. You can connect with your therapist whenever it fits your schedule and switch therapists anytime to find the right one for you. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp can provide access to mental health professionals with a diverse variety of expertise. Talk it out with BetterHelp. Our listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/culty. That's BETTERHELP.com/culty. Break time's over, people. Let's get back to this episode of A Little Bit Culty. It's a good one.
Quick sidebar, Peloton.
Yes.
People have been like, oh, Peloton's culty. Same kind of thing, same reasons. Like, it's all about the instructors and cult of personality. Any thoughts on that? I'm not going to do a whole episode on it.
No.
The thing with Peloton is you're not interacting with people in real life. You're
Right.
just doing it through a screen. So that's like saying I'm watching The White Lotus and I love it, so it's a cult. No, I'm a fan. You're not going out to dinner with the instructors. Stevie, my instructor, was at my apartment for Thanksgiving. Okay? They can't do that through the screen. They're not going to the Hamptons and traveling and staying in the same Airbnb with the guy they see on the screen. No. So no, it's not the same.
Okay. Yeah, no, there was a possibility of them becoming a sponsor, and I was like, oh, I feel like we're going to get in shit for that because they're a little culty. But I think they just people got obsessive about it during COVID, but not as problematic.
No, they were I would not say it's culty. People are fans.
No.
By the way, you just said something that reminded me of another red flag and totally brought...
An NDA is a red flag for me.
NDAs aren't necessarily always a problem, but they can prevent the ability to speak about something abusive, which is a problem. But the other thing you just reminded me about the dinners and stuff is just sort of the feeling of being, like, eventually I got to be in the inner circle in NXIVM, or I thought I was in the inner circle, but just sort of like the thought of someone putting their hand on your hand and be like, do you want to join me for lunch? If I was a newer student.
What did you, she's one of my best friends, the woman who tells the story of, like, I remember the first time she tapped me and then they wound up having that's a whole thing, a falling out that they had. But what did you think of that? Her describing her really falling into what she's describing is limerence / transference / cult of personality. What did you think about everything? Sumi, that's my friend who gave her true story. I was there. Like, we were there together. What did you think about that? It's
classic inner circle, like trying to get, like, for us it was going up the straight path or like getting the gold star to the next thing. But like, if
made her special.
Yeah, it made her feel special. If the leaders are idolized in the way that you've been talking about, and also the other thing that you mentioned in one of the podcasts we haven't talked about yet is also just how sexual it is just to be like grinding up and down on a bike in the dark. So like, and then even if they touch you, and you didn't actually say this in the podcast, I don't think, but when you have physical contact with someone, sex pheromones, specifically oxytocin for women, can be released, and you can feel all sorts of things that aren't necessarily like in reality. Like, this has happened to myself and other people that I know who like have been close to someone that they're not necessarily attracted to or shouldn't be with, and then they have physical contact, and then they're like, we should marry and have children.
Right.
You know, like it's there's hormones.
Sumi says, I remember the first time she touched me.
Right. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
And people don't think it's a big deal.
And I don't think that's an unconscious thing, but I don't think she was, air quotes, tapped unconsciously. I think Stevie can tell when she has a warm audience and knows when the answer is going to be yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But to be invited to go do something after class is the first step of, making somebody feel special so that they're now part of the inner thing, which is a whole other red flag of like the sort of the elitism. I didn't know that people could pay double and reserve bikes or have extra access. Like, I didn't realize it was so exclusive.
Yes.
Which
you
also
had
made me
to
realize
have money.
Yeah.
You had to have money, or you had to have access to money. So people who are either successful in their own right, or these housewives are married to hedge fund guys, and they're like, great, just go do that, just spending the money, I do say that, like, people who spin, like, the characteristics of people who spin, they tend to be perfectionists, very demanding, type A personalities. I mean, I am kind of describing myself.
And me.
Yeah, because it's a dancer, because same traits of dancers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you throw in some money. Like, I didn't know that you could earn your way to. I didn't realize it was so exclusive and sought after, and that certain people would want certain bikes. And
oh my God! Yes.
Well, a group of Type A people is going to grow the brand pretty quickly too.
Yeah.
It's going to get out there pretty quickly. So word of mouth, all the things that you have with that kind of inertia.
And how you're saying people would want certain bikes, a lot of the abuse was from the clients toward just the employees. I thought some of those stories were quite funny, and a lot of the anonymous people, like, we were just treated like garbage by the 1% of New York, like throwing things around the studio and like, you moved my bike. And they're like, we didn't move your fucking bike. And also something I mean, if we go into like God complex of the instructors, how this one instructor who's notorious in New York for being very controlling, she would block her whole front row and choose they wouldn't allow it to be open for booking. And she would select who was going to be in the front row. And she would fat shame people. That's stuff that I didn't include that in the series because I thought it was like gross and just like low-hanging fruit, and I don't feel like talking about that.
Right. Smart.
But Google it. It's there. And she would say things to some employees like, you're not our brand, based on the way they looked or certain things. And so there was this God complex. Why? Because she was Kelly Ripa's favorite instructor, and Kelly Ripa would have her on the show riding the bike.
Okay, what is Monday at noon?
Noon on Monday, aka Monday at noon. That is when the website or the app unlocks where you can book for the week. And people would, first of all, my friend was an executive assistant to a very high up CEO, and a lot of very high up CEOs were going to SoulCycle, and they were in meetings. They didn't have time to be on their computers doing this. So their assistants were tasked with, you need to get me into these classes. And so my friend, one of my best friends, when I told him I'm doing, he's like, do you know that I had to do that for years? And so there was mass chaos, especially in the beginning, because the website couldn't handle the volume of traffic. And you would watch the map of because you can select the bike you're on. So you can watch the class fill up. It's a white circle that turns yellow. And so you can watch it fill up, and then people would call the studios. People would walk into the studios. They were told, do not answer the phones 1 hour before class, because there would be people just trying to keep them on the phone until noon and be like, oh, hey, can you just book me in? So they were told, do not answer the phone from an hour before, because people would just like chit chat to cut the line.
So that became, I think, part of the loaded language.
Also creating
Noon on Monday
scarcity.
and scarcity.
Yes.
What were the other terms, or like if you weren't in SoulCycle, you wouldn't know what the words meant?
Oh, more like moves on the bike. Like they would call it sexy corners, which means...
What are sexy corners?
Well, I mean, this is so embarrassing to say. So like, it's just choreography. Like you're moving your body in an X form, moving your body like diagonally front and back. So like be like sexy. They'd be like body roll and like tapping it back. It's like where you're literally like kind of like doing like almost like a little mini squat. Like, but it's all to the beat of the music. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of the choreography would just have like terms. Tapping it back and Monday at noon are probably, those are the ones that people know.
Okay.
It's so stupid to talk about. It sounds very silly. Monday at noon is not silly to talk about. That is serious business.
But Super Soul meant what?
Super Soul was the concierge service where if you paid $20,000 or what, rack it up, and they still have that, by the way, that gave you could book your bike up to 6 weeks in advance. So you could cut the line.
Wow.
And they still have that.
Wow. It's a system.
They still have it.
Yeah. And like waitlists form, I was always emailing, hey, I'm on bikes, I'm on whatever. Suppose I missed the window, right? I'm in a meeting because I have a job. And they didn't have an app yet. That was like a big thing also. They didn't have the app until 2015. And I started in 2011. And so when I started to really care where I was, I didn't want to be in the back corner. I wanted to be able to see the instructor. Like I wanted to be close. So I would always email. If I got like a shitty bike, I'd be like, hey, I'm on bike whatever, 25. If anything, I'd be so specific. If anything on the sidebars open, or if any, I would be so, I'm a psychotic person. Like it was me. And they knew me. They'd be like, of course they liked me, but
yeah, of course, look at you.
I was back row. That would have been back row for sure.
One of the things I liked about the podcast also is that you kept saying things like, remember, this is 2009, before there was Apple Music, right? Like people going to a record store and making a mixtape, like essentially. Or
buying music. Yeah, because I really had to timestamp it. Like, because SoulCycle opened before the iPhone was released.
That's crazy.
So we were like on a BlackBerry, if that. People were still on sidekicks. I love the guy in the beginning talking about how he knew the whole feel of the keys.
Yeah. I totally remember that. I could also type without looking at my keys. I loved my BlackBerry.
I was dying when he was. I'm like, this is too good. I have to leave it in. It's such a slice of life.
It's such a slice of life.
Yeah.
Or saying like this is before Instagram, or this is before like online apps that could go into your phone.
Quickly, huh?
It happens so quickly.
Yeah.
It's all kind of a blur. But do you remember where you were, or how did you feel when you saw or did you even see the Schitt's Creek reference to SoulCycle?
No, tell me.
That?
I've seen all the SoulCycle. I've seen the Saturday Night Live sketches. What's the Schitt's Creek reference?
We have to send it to you. It's basically, have you seen Schitt's Creek?
I've seen a lot of it.
Basically, one of them brings them to a SoulCycle thing, and they highlight the cult stuff there, and they're wearing these matching sort of tunics, and the leader's name is Citrus, and he's yelling affirmations like a guru. And they bring in some other elements, like sort of MLM elements. And there's also going to be like at the end of the class, there's going to be an ascension through a portal.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's funny.
I'll send it to you, but I definitely, if you ever do a bonus to this series.
Oh no, I have bonus episodes coming out. Oh, and one thing we didn't talk about as far as like the group mentality, it's in the series, the merch. That was a huge thing.
Oh, the merch. Yeah.
Everyone was when I was going, every single person, including me, you would be in like I would wear the legging. They would have co-branded. So like they would have Nike and Lululemon like leggings, but then they would put the SoulCycle, the skull and crossbones was the SoulCycle logo. So they would put that in different colors or whatever the hell.
That was their logo?
Yeah. Yeah, look it up. So yeah, I don't really see it anymore, but like.
With a lot of spiritual gangster shirts and all that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They would co-brand with spiritual gangster, but everybody in the heyday, every single person, I wouldn't see a person who was not wearing something. A lot of the guys would wear bandanas, and of course they would have the skull and crossbow, to sweat, and a tank top, a bra. People, of course, would always forget to bring socks. So, of course, they're just selling socks with the SoulCycle shit on it. And so, yeah, the look of it also was very, when you walk down the street, even in like the tote, like if you bought something, there was a silver shiny SoulCycle bag. It was a signifier of something that you had money, that you were, it was a signifier of.
You have two houses.
That's funny.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
If you're still in New York City,
Yeah.
would you feel comfortable wearing this merch?
Oh my God. Maybe.
Are you a little bit culty? So we joke about how now our podcast is like.
You become a cult in your own.
Well, a little bit.
We're not big enough.
And there's no bait and switch. It is what it is.
Yeah.
And I guess that's how we sort of define a destructive cult versus something that's a little bit culty is there a bait and switch? Is what you're signing up for what it's going to be?
Yes.
And I feel like for the most part it is. It's sort of like it only really becomes problematic if you become really extreme with it. And I guess that's part of the whole sort of.
Well, are you abusing people?
And I think also if you worked for the company, we're talking about and that's why like a lot of this I interviewed all employees. So for riders, it was much more of like a pure experience, unless you flew too close to the sun, like my friend Sumi did, and then her world exploded with Stevie. It was like a very dramatic situation falling out. But for the most part, it was really the employees who experienced negative stuff. And it was because of the Equinox acquisition. It was not because of the beautiful time with the original founders and like how everybody like talks so glowingly about it.
So what do you hope people get from the podcast? Like, what's your goal?
My goal is when people listen to it, when people really go through the whole thing, I want people to feel, fuck, like, I wish I was there in the heyday. I want to capture the magic. That was my goal, to look back on this time that was such a great time in my life. And it was this moment in New York City, in the culture and how it captured the zeitgeist. It was just an era and it was a vibe and it brought so many people together. And I want people to remember, people who were part of it. And that's so many of the messages I'm getting are from former employees and thanking me. This is like healing me. People have been burned by it and it's healing for them. And a lot of the interviewees as well, people who I had to really convince and offer anonymity, people who were very hesitant to talk. In the end, when they were like walking out the door or later, they would text me and be like, I'm so happy that I haven't talked about this in so many years. And it's giving me closure, because a lot of the employees felt abandoned. So I hope it brings a lot, like nostalgia, and also like, it's like juicy, fun stuff. I hope you're entertained.
Oh yeah, it's definitely entertaining.
Also, it was also informative.
I think it achieves that goal, and also for us and our goal in educating about what red flags look like, especially in this space. I mean, we make flippant jokes all the time that any group can this is not a joke. Any group can become culty, but, flippant jokes about Orange Theory and SoulCycle and so on.
Every group has an extreme version of themselves.
Yeah. So they can listen to this podcast and go like, oh yeah, that I definitely had goal achieved with me. I definitely wish I had been there in the heyday. And also a goal for us would be is how to navigate those beautiful things and know what red flags to look for to not cross over into a dangerous or abusive aspect of it, which is like kind of same thing for us with NXIVM. There's a lot of people who were there in the heyday of NXIVM and did not get burned or branded, literally and metaphorically, and would stick to that, saying it was a great experience. They were not part of the inner circle. They didn't have to have sex with Keith Raniere. You know what I mean? So it's just an ongoing thing for us is how do you take the tools, put them in your life and not make the tools your life and get totally
protect
caught
yourself.
up.
Yeah.
So awesome. I'm so glad that we got to meet
Me
and
too.
do this. What a treat.
This
we
is
can
so
do a spin
fun.
class when
I
we
love
come
you
to
guys.
New York next.
Yes.
I love you. This is awesome. And we will be in New York this fall. And I think that we should go to a SoulCycle class together.
We should. I'll take you to Janet. You gotta go.
Okay,
I mean, first of all, she's the only one
Hell
still
yeah.
teaching. So,
Let's do it.
we're going.
We'll have to go. We'll do a little like behind the scenes and we'll film it and we'll like reference this episode and your podcast.
That
and
would be
just,
so fun.
That'd be really fun.
We want to be love bombed, first and foremost.
I mean,
Just want to experience that one more time, right?
just
Sarah?
a little taste. Just a little taste. Just tell me I'm special.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for making this podcast.
Thank
and,
you.
And for coming on the show.
Yeah, tell us, everyone, where they can hear it.
Yeah, where can they hear it? How can they find you?
Yeah. So Cult of Body and Soul, you can find it. First of all, full video episodes are on YouTube. If you want to watch it and see people, I think my instructions would be like, listen to it first because you can really get immersed in the music. And then if you're curious to see what people look like, all the episodes are on YouTube. And then, of course, all podcast platforms, Cult of Body and Soul. And on Instagram, if you want to connect with me, JessXNYC. And there you can see my interviews with people from my regular show and
awesome.
Posting fun stuff.
Thank you so much, Jess. We'll see you in person in the fall.
If you like the show, please consider supporting us by giving us a rating, a review, and subscribe on iTunes. Cults are commonplace now, and we're looking at them all, and every little bit helps. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. That was a great episode. It's such a good example how things can be a little bit culty. Can't quite put your finger on it. Can't quite tell what it is that's going on until you put language to it. It's not something you're going to like ruin your life with, but it is something that can kind of get underneath your skin. You don't know what it was and you walk away from going, what the hell was that? It's fortunate Jess had a great experience and I love that she's able to show that, but then also show,
look at the dark side.
Look at the dark side. And there's certainly a dark side. So everyone, please give her podcast a listen, maybe after you listen to ours so you can kind of know what you're looking at. I mean, that's the only way I'll self-promote our podcast. I'm not big on that, but I think it's good to go into it knowing what you're looking at.
I also think that we have to do a section. I think we mentioned SoulCycle in our upcoming book, but don't get into the nitty-gritty of why it was culty. So this draft is about to go into copy editing. So let's take a look and see where we can plug in a little bit more about SoulCycle so people can make the connections.
Or just workout classes and things that generate a vibe, not necessarily based on spinning, but the atmosphere they create around things to lure people.
It's the obsessive part that's
and
problematic.
Marketing. You're marketed to. You're proactively marketed to.
Because the community aspect in and of itself is not a problem. If you're going to go work out in a community and like show up like you would to a Sunday church, except you're working out and you're not religious, I think that's fine. But not if you're obsessive and you feel like you can't miss it, or you're shamed if you don't show up, or it's like too exclusive to even get a seat. Like that part really chaps my ass.
It's a great example of how people don't think they can fall for something, but then fall for something kind of, and in hindsight go, oh yeah, that was marketed towards or unwittingly marketed towards my vulnerabilities.
And
so
I
very
hope,
informative.
Very
Thank
informative.
you, Jess.
And I hope this episode also helps people look at the things that they do and decide if it's healthy for them. Like, remember that yoga studio I was telling you about, that it was really dark and loud?
Yeah.
That same yoga studio was always sold out. It was always packed. And there was a point where that was kind of exciting and it was fun. It had a good vibe, but it was stressful to know whether or not I would make it. The studio I'm at now doesn't sell out, and that's That's just what I need for my well-being right now. And that's a personal choice. So we hope that this episode has given you some tools for navigating fitness programs all around the world.
Thank you for listening.
Namaste.
Bye for now.
Sinking down to the depths of the ocean, I'm hanging on to the weight of my love. If I let go of it all, I could leave, but I know I won't.
A Little Bit Culty is a Trace 120 production, executive produced by Sarah Edmondson and Anthony Nippy Ames, in collaboration with Amphibian Media. Our co-creator is Jess Tardy. Audio engineering by Red Cayman Studios, and our writing and research is done by Emma Deal and Kristen Reeder. Our theme song, Cultivated, is by the artists John Bryant and Nigel Aslan.